Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.
It's Mental Health Extra on a Tuesday. Jake Mills is joining me, Mick Coyle, in the studio. Jake, it's great to see you from Chasing the Stigma.
And you, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. This is going to be twice in 24 hours. We're speaking again tomorrow morning.
I know. Sick of me?
About something which you're keeping very quiet about.
About something that I've literally said it's going to happen soon. I'll tell you soon for about 3 months.
Well, I'll see you tomorrow to find out what that is.
Yeah.
That's a tease if
I'll
there
tell
ever
you
was
soon.
one. It's good to see you. You're with us for Mental Health Extra off the back of Dave Cottrell's story on Mental Health Monday yesterday. Dave was a really fascinating guy. He's got his own mental health podcast.
Yeah, I noted that, and I try and wear my way into that one, I think, because it'd be decent to be on a good podcast.
Even as you started saying that sentence, you were thinking, oh.
Yeah, I know.
It's called Master the Mind, Master Anything as well. Dave had he made a comment as part of the Mental Health Monday show yesterday, which you can check out, by the way, as a podcast. Just search for Mental Health Monday in your podcast provider. It's a phrase we use all the time, and I guess sometimes we use it a little bit lightheartedly, but then that thing of going, I'll be happy when. And I do this all the time, and I think people probably do this all the time in their lives as well, particularly when they think about physical appearance. Mm-hmm. I'll be happy when I'm down to 12.5 stone. I'll be happy when I finally fit into such and such a thing. Which he says is a strange way of thinking it, because he's basically saying, I'm not going to be happy until.
Yeah, the goalpost will always be moved. And that's the idea, is that if you can say, I'll be happy when I lose £6, and you look back at old photographs of yourself and you'll think, I wish I looked like that again. But then you think back to the time and you weren't happy with how you looked then. You wanted to achieve something else. You wanted to lose weight. You wanted to gain weight. You wanted to gain muscle, whatever it was. So it's this idea that you'll always have a target. You'll always have an aim, and actually it's not an achievable one, because you will always change what that is.
I mean, that's not to say that people who want to lose weight shouldn't, go about losing weight, or people who. But it's the same with money. There's a guy in the news today, Stan Kroenke, who owns whatever proportion of Arsenal, 1.2 billion pounds worth of it. He now wants the rest of it.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd have said to him when he was starting out collecting scrap or whatever he did when he started out and going, you'll own 1.2 billion pounds worth of one of the biggest football club names in the world, but it won't be enough. You'll want more. You'll want more. And sometimes you get when people win the lottery and they go, I thought I had everything, but it didn't solve their problems.
Yeah, and I think he's a perfect example of it, because he wants more, and at the end of it, he's going to own Arsenal, and that's not good for anyone. So yeah, no, it's. I mean, that is ridiculous, by the way. But it is this idea of, and I think it was summed up brilliantly yesterday. It's not about not having aspirations. It's not having aims or achievements or goals, but it's recognising the steps that you have made and appreciating how far you have come, and giving yourself the credit for the work that you're doing, because I think I'm a victim of this myself. I'm not a person who looks back. I'm only a person who looks forward. I'm not somebody who will reflect. I'm someone who will always kind of, whatever it is that I've achieved, I'm on to the next thing. But I think it's important at times to be able to look back and to appreciate how hard you have worked and how hard you've fought in some cases. And that goes for all parts of life. That is from career to health. And it's particularly important when we are talking about mental health, because I think if somebody is in a bad place or they're struggling, nobody turns it around the next day. Nobody wakes up and says, right, I'm 100% better now. It is a long journey. And yes, you have that aspiration to get there, but you have to be acknowledging and appreciating the small steps that you're taking, because they're ultimately the only things that are going to get you there in the first place.
As part of the conversation, Dave talked about bipolar and the highs and the lows, about how he's not able to manage it as such, but he's able to recognise when the highs and lows might be there as well. One of the other things that he's doing is he's talking about this idea of paying it forward, doing work on the side to help extra people, because he says that he recognises those signs of the highs that he gets from bipolar, the things that he almost enjoys from helping other people now. And actually one of his big things is to help a person every single day. He's got plans, for future years to come on as well, to have this idea of paying it forward. Now, that might help people out specifically with a mental health issue, but actually I think there's something to be said for that, about general mindfulness, feeling good, being part of a community, interacting with people, which is a feel-good factor. which maybe it is a mental health thing, but it's not something which you would clinically diagnose as a mental health thing. That feel-good factor that come from not only helping people out, but through helping people out, helping them move house, clearing an old, battered old garden, whatever it would be, you're helping something, but you're also having conversations with them, you're having social interaction with them as well, and they're the wider benefits from doing these sort of activities.
Yeah, and it can even be really small things, and that's what they say about, one act of kindness a day, and it really can have an impact on you and how you see things, how you see people, how you see environments, how you see society. It really can change so much for you. And I mean, just it's not exactly an example of helping somebody else, but an example of how you see things differently. So like in the last week or so, I've been particularly stressed with work and getting myself down about things. And I turned that round yesterday and I walked through town, and I walk through town quite a lot. And say I walked through town on Friday last week when I was feeling all down and stressed, and everyone was doing me head in. I looked around, it looked like a depressing place. I was seeing the bad, I was seeing the frowns, I was seeing all the rubbish and all these things. And I walked through last night, and I was like, this place is fantastic. It felt like I was on holiday. I've seen all the happy faces. I've seen all the people enjoying themselves. And it's just how you change your mindset can change how you see everything in the world and how you live your life. And
if I saw those two things on CCTV, though, would they look like exactly the same street on exactly the same day with just the same bloke walking down it?
Absolutely. But then there's the small things that you can introduce into your life, like those kind of the acts of kindness, to be able to help people, to talking to people, to helping communities. They're all things that you can help to change your mindset and how you see life. It's really, really powerful.
Dave's got his Change Your Life a Day project as well. Get more information about him on Instagram and on Facebook as well. And you can check out his own podcast as well. It is called Master the Mind, Master Anything. Dave Cottrell was our guest on this week's Mental Health Monday. Jake Mills is with us in the studio from Chasing the Stigma. Jake, there's been a story in the news this week about self-harm, the number of girls being hospitalised or seen within a hospital as a result of self-harm has doubled in the last 20 years. For boys, the number stays about the same. We'll come on to that one as well. There's also a huge rise, and it's not really been talked about, the number of overdoses which have taken place, up something like 50%. It's much more significant figures, but the self-harm figures are getting the headline. There are two things on this one. The first one being, obviously, it's doubled in 20 years. The other thing, for boys, it stayed round about the same. From that point of view, we take that to be good news. That's still terrible news, isn't it?
Yeah.
That in 2 decades,
Nobody
has been able to reduce the number of young men who feel the need, for whatever reason, to self-harm. I mean, for girls, it's got twice as bad. But for boys, we haven't been... So we've actually... That isn't one, concerning story and one story of, neutral value. Those are two really upsetting stories that shouldn't be stories that we need to change. We need to change now.
Yeah, in both cases, there's been no improvement, and that's really, really concerning. But the numbers involving young girls and self-harm really is kind of frightening. It's no coincidence that, the kind of peer pressure and body image issues that we're facing throughout the media and in society are going to have that significant influence on girls, and that's going to be part of the reasons. It's terrifying. It really is. It's a horrible, horrible thought. And within young people, self-harm can lead to suicide, which is the biggest killer of young people as well in England. So it's a really, really significant issue. But once again, we're talking about figures, and behind every figure is a person. Behind every person's a family. These are people. They're not just numbers on a page, and it's not just numbers that can be thrown away in a newspaper article and forgot about it. It has to be addressed, and it has to be really taken on seriously. And I just feel like a bit of a broken record, because we're saying the same thing over and over again, and nothing's actually really being done. It doesn't take a genius to know that something, even if it's something small, can make a difference. But who's stepping up to do it?
But this is the idea, and I mentioned this yesterday, and forgive me if I'm repeating myself. this idea that, there's a mental health time bomb, it's gone off, but we're now repeating the same mistakes with our own children. That actually, generationally, the mental health time bomb, which was in danger of going off, is now going off. And actually, we're now not dealing with the situation for the next generation who are coming through. In fact, the situation's actually worse for the next generation, particularly those young girls. For the young boys, in regard to the specific case we're talking about here, it hasn't improved at all. So we're not learning any lessons here.
No, and arguably it's going to only get worse, because if you can imagine society 20 years ago with the media and the way that bodies and body image is perceived at the moment, that's only going to get worse with technology, with social media. That is only going to get worse. So by not doing anything, look how bad it's got in terms of the last 20 years. That is going to double, treble, quadruple over the next 20 years. So you have to be doing something now. You have to be having conversations with people from a young age about body image, about self-harm, about mental health, to understand the feelings, to understand the thoughts, to understand that you don't have to be trying to be somebody else. I thought in the podcast yesterday, it was really important that it was talking about weight as well, and body image in that, in boys, in men. But it's a serious issue, and we have to be taking it as serious as it actually is.
Jake Mills is with us from Chasing the Stigma. He's actually back on the programme again tomorrow with some exclusive news, which he's going to tell me about tomorrow morning as part of Liverpool Live. Just on the podcast extras, by the way, there's the interview that Matt Jones did as part of Full Time with George Green. People can get this exclusively on the podcast as well. You're an Everton fan, so you'll have heard the name people talking about, and he was one of these hotshot kids who was going to be the next big thing, and it didn't work out for him. If you listen to the interview, you'll find out exactly why it didn't work out for him.
Yeah, and again, it's another example of the pressures that, young football. I think we look at footballers, don't we, and we just see people just kicking the ball about. We forget about the person, we forget about the pressures that they're under. I think a lot of people can talk about money when they're talking about footballers and lose sympathy for people, but for academy kids coming through, young kids who are trying to make it and got a really, really high ask of them in terms of performance as well as a short career, there's a hell of a lot of pressure on them, and unfortunately George fell in that trap of addiction, and it's good to hear how he's come out of that now. It did take a couple of goes, but he's a good example of how you can turn it around no matter what.
I think sometimes as well you hear about these stories and you see people who get to a certain point within his own career. George is still in a good place in terms of his age and what he might be capable of. This idea that he fell into these traps and he couldn't get himself back out, to the point where actually his opportunities within the game were taken away from him. He spoke very warmly about the different clubs who he'd been involved in, who've actually then provided him with that, so he can look at himself in the mirror and not think, well, I wasted the opportunity. He can still look at himself in the mirror and go, right, well, maybe I'm not at the level I thought I was going to be at, but things would have happened anyway in regard to that. Yeah. Look at the cohort of players we've gone through, injuries and all sorts, but I've got an opportunity now and I can play my football and I can enjoy playing the football.
Yeah, and he's determined and he's ambitious, and even where maybe he's a bit more ambitious than the club that he's in at the moment, and he made that clear. But it's good. It's a good sign of intention of him and his the character that he has. That he's saying this is not the end of me. This is I'm only going to go on from here and going to achieve what I know I can achieve. So fair play to him.
Jake, thank you for your time today. I know we're back on tomorrow, so we won't. It's kind of me and you. We did that 24-hour show. That was enough in itself. But we're back on tomorrow, and we'll include that conversation in next week's Mental Health Monday podcast as well. So we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you.
Sooner than you'd rather like, but let's get a hotel.
Be good to see it in the morning again.
We'll go out for some tea. We'll stick around. We'll have a night of it. We'll get up tomorrow morning. We have a right old life. In fact, last time we shared a hotel room, I nearly wrecked the place, didn't I?
You did wreck the place.
Jake, thank you for your time. Jake Mills from Chasing the Stigma. You want to find out mental health services close to where you live, head to hubofhope.co.uk. That's hubofhope.co.uk. You're with Radio City Talk.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
On Radio City Talk.
Okay, it's Radio City Talk. We're just going to touch on a story that we brought you yesterday. New figures that show the number of girls being admitted to hospital after self-harming has nearly doubled in 20 years. Figures looked at by the NSPCC over 2 decades, though, show the number of boys needing treatment has stayed roughly the same. Let's get a take on this now with Paula Smith, who is from the South Hub at the Liverpool Bypass organisation, the South Hub coordinator. Paula, thank you for joining us on Radio City Talk. Talk. Thank you for your time. Let's take a look at these figures. What are your readings of what's come out in regard to these survey and these stats?
Yeah, I think it is quite stark when you look at those figures, but we also have to look at how things have changed and developed in our world, if you like, over the last 20 years, especially in terms of social media and school and the pressures that are on young people.
I was going to say, what for you has changed and what changes have you seen in that period of time that makes you think, things are different now?
Well, I think it's just the actual scale of, social media and the type of things that children, young people can have access to. 20 years ago, we didn't have vlogs that were, quite graphic in terms of showing us how to do things. We didn't have group forums and things like that where young people could speak about these things in a group together. So they're certainly some of the things that have changed massively over the last 20 years.
Yeah, I guess there's one of those things there where you could argue that, social media, the internet has been a force for bad. But, there's a sense that, the internet's not going away, is it? And I guess that it's a world we've got to adapt to now.
Yeah, definitely. And don't get me wrong, social media also has many positive attributes about it and can help lots of young people as well, especially young people who are isolated. It's a place where young people can find information to help, support them. But, I suppose it's more about us making sure that we educate our young people around what they can access on the internet, because that's, I suppose, the other side of it, making sure that they understand what it is that they're watching and that they actually speak to adults, or certainly that adults who are caring for young people know what their young people are accessing on the internet.
Yeah, you mentioned the idea of vlogs, and there are things that you can get online now, which are essentially a guide of how to go about self-harm. Now, as an adult looking at that, you would be horrified, and you would think, well, how is this person allowed to even broadcast this thing? But it is a wild west out there when it comes to the internet. The same rules don't apply on YouTube or those types of websites as they do on the TV. And I guess as well, that's the adult world that's got to get to grips with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there is a lot of sort of lack of understanding about self-harm as well. And certainly I would suggest, that the increase in young people being admitted to hospital around self-harm could possibly be around, obviously parents being quite rightly frightened about or fearful of what's happening to their young person and how they're coping with things, and then that would increase in hospital admissions. But again, it's all around education and understanding why young people are doing the things that they're doing.
Obviously, at White Patch, you work with young people, boys and girls. This is a figure which says that girls are being admitted to hospital at double the rates from 20 years ago, whereas boys have stayed the same. What's your gut thought, Paula, as to why that might be the case?
Well, as I've said, I think there could be... I think it's too simplistic to say that it is just social media. I think there are many things at play in terms of why young people struggle with, the pressures of just society, I suppose. And it could be relationships, friendship groups, school, the pressure to achieve, to know what career that they want to go into. Young people who are not academic, what about them? Having low aspirations, all these different things, family relationships, that's also a massive part of what we see young people for in terms of, the impact that can have on their mental health and their emotional well-being. And then certainly as well, when you reach a certain age, that's when you're more aware of your own identity, your sexuality, your gender, who you are as a person. So if you're not fitting in with what you, let's say, see on social media, for example, then that can have an impact on your mental health and emotional well-being. So there's lots of different things, and it can be quite complex for even, us as professionals to understand. So if you think about a young person trying to fathom their way through all of these different things, then you can sort of half understand why they might be turning to something such as self-harm.
I was going to ask you about that because from a point of view, when we try and get our heads around what's going on with our young people, I've heard one or two suggestions today about the fact that self-harm can be a symptom of wider issues, more complex issues going on within a young person's head. And I guess as well that's one of the issues around self-harm, that actually it might be the first sign that a guardian, a parent, a teacher, whoever it might be, might spot a physical injury with a young person, which might be the point of view whereby they might start thinking about getting some help. It might be a signpost of other issues that are going on. You might, get to grips with the self-harm issues straight away, but actually the other issues going on within a young person's head might take longer, might take more resources to sort out.
I think that might be true. That certainly in some situations, it might well be that that's the first sort of opportunity someone's had where they've seen a physical, injury, because I think that's something that we know, isn't it? Mental health is not something that can be seen. However, self-harm is. So it may well be the conduit, if you like, for somebody being able to access support. However, our service is an early intervention service, so we're, very much sort of looking at, what happens before that self-harm occurs, what are the signs to look out for in children, young people, whether that is sort of, their behaviour in school or at home, or some changes that someone close to them would be able to recognise, because it is very much about getting the right support early on, so that we would hopefully aim to, ensure that a young person doesn't start self-harming. But that's not to say that would always be the case. But I think certainly it can be something where that would be the first thing that somebody would see. Yeah, it's right.
We've got Paula Smith with us from Liverpool Young Persons Advisory Service, YPAS, their South Hub coordinator. Paula, it's a sign of how we sort of have to deal with things sometimes in the mental health world, that sometimes, you clutch at straws for good news. Here, the NSPCC showing the number of boys needing treatment has stayed roughly the same in 20-year period. Arguably, you could say, well, in 20 years, we still haven't got to grips with the reason that boys are self-harming and why boys are self-harming, and actually reducing those numbers, because only when we reduce those numbers do we actually get a result here.
I think that's a good point, because I think we research suggests as well that, particularly males, don't talk about things that are happening to them, their mental health. It's still a taboo subject. So, I think that there's still a lot more work to do in terms of, again, showing and enabling people to talk about their emotional well-being, because it's really important, because like you've just pointed out, those numbers haven't decreased, so still something is happening with our young males' mental health and their well-being.
And in terms of those young people as well, sometimes with these sorts of figures, Paul, when you have people being admitted into hospital or connections with services, it's a sign that actually those pathways are starting to open up, that those people who might be thinking about self-harming actually start getting help and actually start ticking boxes, if you like, that then flag up on data sets like they have done with this. Do you think there might be a chance of that actually, if we're going to look for positives, it might well be that in some cases young people are starting to reach out and they're starting to get into a system?
I mean, it could well be. I think that there's lots of things, isn't there, that are going on. If you like, I don't think there's any one reason about it. But I think that what we do know is that we do need more resources, because it's very complex, and if we want to really get to a stage where it's early intervention, then we have to have more resources in schools, more trained and qualified people who are dealing with young people at an early intervention stage. Because we don't want young people going into hospital and reaching that crisis point, because usually that's what's happening. But we also have to respond to that crisis, which is, you were saying, it's increased dramatically over the last 20 years, so we need to do something about it. And I think that more resources need to be put into mental health services for children and young people. That, I think, goes without saying, just based on that report today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we take a look at this. We're talking about being admitted to hospital. So when that point of crisis has arrived, as opposed to the work that you're talking about, Paula, which is getting in there, the early intervention, so that children and young people don't end up in hospital at the moment. Paula, you do some great work at YPAS. YPAS does fantastic work right across the city and beyond as well. Do you have hope for the future? Do you see these numbers coming down?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that YPAS, like you just said, it does fantastic work across the city, and we're always striving to make sure that we're developing our workforce. And one of the things that, you know, we now have in as part of our service amongst the counselling and support services is a children and young people's wellbeing practitioner service, which is working with low-level depression, anxiety and phobias with children from 11 to 18. And what happens is, you know, we're, like I was saying before, it's all about early intervention. They're going to be in schools, secondary schools across Liverpool from September. So it's another way of us trying to enable young people to access support in a place at the right time with the right person. So we do always have hope for the future, and I think, you know, the further we go along with these types of services, the more evidence we will get about the usefulness of them, and I hope to see, you know, in the next 20 years that these statistics are no longer even existent. That would be, you know, a dream.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's going to be a brilliantly useful service. Paula, thank you for your time today. Thanks for joining us to share your thoughts on that story. Paula Smith is Liverpool YPAS South Hub Coordinator and our guest today on Radio City Talk. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Mental Health Monday
On Radio City Talk.
with Mick Coyle.
Tackling the stigma.
Radio City Talk.